All right, I will call the meeting of the Essex Junction City Council to order for Wednesday, June 11th. First item on the agenda is any additions or changes? Any from staff? Council? Okay, no need to approve the agenda. So then we're going to go on to public to be heard. Is there any public that would like to have a couple minutes to say something to the council? If you're online, please raise your hand. If you're in the room, Marcus, if you can let me know. Okay, and I don't see any hands online, so we will move on to item 5A, which is the public hearing for the large water user rate. And Jess Morris is with us.
Hello.
So I will open the public hearing.
All right. Hello, everyone. I am going to share my screen. Go. All right. So we are here tonight to present the large volume water user rate that is calculated for FY26. According to the large volume water user rate setting policy that we have, this is just slide just kind of overviews the highlights of that policy. Global Foundries is currently the only large water user in the city, and we are required by this policy to hold one public hearing for rate setting for the large user rate. And there's a link here. You can view the entire policy on the city's website. The water fund budget and the rate calculation was all sent directly to the contacts that we have at Global Foundries immediately following the May meeting where the council approved the water fund budget. So just to give another quick overview of the water budget for FY26, again, this was approved at the first May meeting. The budget total is just over 1.9 million for FY26, which represents just about a $155,000 increase, or 8.5% over the prior year. Primary drivers for this increase are about a 5% increase in the Champlain Water District wholesale rate that the city pays for water, as well as a projected 13.5% increase in the state fee that we pay for the water as well. We have a 32.5% increase in salaries and benefits. If you'll recall from the budget process, we went through all of our public works staff and determined the correct allocations for the positions based on the actual work that they're doing across all of the general fund, sanitation, and water funds for FY26. And lastly, we have a $50,000 planned increase in the contribution to the water capital reserve. So all of that is resulting in the proposed large user rate increase to just under 17 cents per 1,000 gallons for FY26, which is just about a penny increase from the current fiscal year. And this below here just explains how that rate is calculated. This explanation can also be found in the policy. So everything that's done in this process is clearly defined by the rate setting policy that the city has. And that is it for the public hearing presentation portion. We can take any questions if there are any.
Are there any questions in the room for Jess and for the public, from the public?
Public, during the public hearing, the public will get their opportunity. We'll have a discussion after the public hearing. Okay.
Yep.
No. Oh, sorry, Steve. Sorry.
Mike.
Steve Eustace. Just a quick question. So is Global Foundries the only large water user? Okay. And you said that the unaccounted for water across the entire city, they just do their proportion based on, okay, awesome. All right.
Yep.
Thank you.
And I'll also add to follow up to Steve's questions that the amount that Global Foundries pays, or any large user really would pay, is reconciled at the end of every fiscal year. So if there was less or more water usage, they will either receive a bill for the additional or a credit for any usage under what was projected.
Thanks, Jess.
Yep.
Any other questions in the room?
Seeing none.
Any online? Hold for a second to see if there's any hands. Not seeing any, so I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Now we can move on to the discussion and consideration of setting all utility rates. This is our discussion portion, Brian. So if you have questions for Jess, feel free to ask away.
Hi, Jess. This is Brian Sheldon. I noticed that you had a comment in there that one of the biggest drivers of the increase was a 32% staffing increase. I'm aware that a big maybe 10% of the increase is due to benefits. I think I know the answer to this, but it's not like we increased staff here. This is about reallocating expenses for Central City staff. I was wondering if you could explain that a little bit. That's the answer.
Nope. So sort of. What we did was we looked at the public works team. So the individuals that work within the public works department kind of split their roles. So they're doing some streets related work, some water related work, and some sanitation related work. So what we did this year as part of the process for really kind of digging into budgeting and allocating costs accurately as possible, we looked at each of the public works staff and determined what percentage of their time is actually spent within each of those three departments. So the reason for the 32.5% increase is because we found that they are actually spending more time working within the water department than what was previously estimated. And then some of it, yes, is definitely related to the benefits cost increase as well. But
Go ahead, let me let you finish.
there are no new staff. We have maintained the existing staff level.
It's primarily driven by reallocation of the cost center for public works employees. Is that what I heard you say?
Yes,
Thank you.
correct. Yep.
Did you have any other questions, Brian?
Nope, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Go ahead.
Yeah, in the presentation, I just noted the fact that you said the 13.5% increase in the state fee was a projected increase. So I'm just curious from your expertise and experience, what's the likelihood up or down on the move of this number?
It's a hard number to predict because the state is not consistent in the frequency that they do these increases. So I think the 13.5% is probably slightly high, maybe by 1% or 2, but I think it's fairly accurate because they haven't done an increase to the state fee in I think 3 or 4 years now.
It'll all be made up there. So, okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate
Yep.
that. That's all I had. Tim's good.
Okay, I don't have any questions. So if everyone is okay, we can entertain the motion that was in the packet.
This is presented. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's approved. Thanks, Jess.
Thank you, everyone.
Appreciate it.
All right.
All right, next up, we have a whole slate of interviews for various committees.
Make some edits to this
Absolutely.
list. Okay, so we had a few changes. First up is we do have another Bike Walk Advisory Committee applicant, so that is exciting. So we won't make a decision more than likely on Bike Walk Advisory Committee tonight, because you've got one person to interview tonight, and you'll have another person to interview on June 25th. The other change is that both Maggie Macy on the DRB as well as Dylan have both submitted their applications. So those are current DRB members, and they have resubmitted their applications. Dylan just submitted his, so we didn't have this listed on this note, but Dylan also is not able to make tonight's meeting or your 25th meeting. So there's a similar note that we've got here for Maggie's in terms of how you want to approach the next steps on that. And then, unfortunately, Zachary, one of the applicants for moderator, had something come up today, and he was not able to make it tonight. So we will, I believe we will be able to interview him on the 25th as well. And so I think we were expecting that you might have two decisions tonight, and probably both of those will come off to give you more time to interview on the 25th.
Okay. Thank you. I think what probably makes sense is to take the interviews in the way that they are laid out on the memo, and maybe leave DRB to the last for the discussion. So with that, I'm assuming Daniel is in person for Bike Walk. I'm not even going to try, because I'm just going to butcher your last name, so I won't do it. But how do you say it?
Yeah, so Daniel Ligori.
Okay. Thanks for joining us, Daniel. So we do have your application. Thank you for submitting that. I usually just start out with asking, is there anything that you want to tell us that's not in the application?
That's not in the application. I think, well, I could do the intro of myself, but I think I did do that in the application.
Yep.
So
Sure.
yeah, I'd say, yeah.
No worries. Do you have any questions for us about the committee or anything?
Well, I've attended a couple committee meetings. I've seen the work that they're doing, and I've found it to be very interesting. And, you know, both small scale, kind of like, where are we going to put signage posts, to bigger scale projects of like, okay, like what do we envision the future of Essex Junction's walk bike infrastructure to be like? And I found it tremendously stimulating, and I would very much like to join the committee. Yeah.
Thank you. Counselors, anybody have any questions for Daniel?
Right.
You ride your bike here? I did.
Yeah.
I
You got
like
that.
to work in Burlington pretty much every day. It is an e-bike, but I also have a couple regular bikes. Yeah, biking is the passion. I can also tell you who won the stage today in the Criterium du Dauphiné. I can ramble about bikes forever.
What kind of cyclist are you? Besides, I was going to say, are you a commuter cyclist? Do you race crits yourself, or?
Yeah, so commuter cyclist, gravel cyclist, used to be road cyclist, but I think in Vermont, gravel is so nice, you know, and living here, you know, I can take the bike path to the Experience from my place, and then, you know, you take that left turn and it's just open gravel roads. It's so delightful. I think Vermont is one of the best places on earth to bike. It's one of the main reasons why I'm here.
Well, I was going to ask you, not having ridden in the Netherlands, but having ridden in Belgium, you know, what could we be doing better? Well, the Netherlands is an impossible standard to follow because their bicycle infrastructure development occurred during the development of automotive infrastructure, right? So throughout that process, they were, okay, we're going to build a road. Well, there's a bike path next to it. And I benefited from that system very much so. Like I could bike to school, but I could also bike to Belgium on bike paths just throughout the whole country. And it was, free to use, super easy with wayfinding. I didn't need a GPS, all that stuff. So I'd say what we can do better in the US, that being said, is I think the toughest part for me, also with my job at Local Motion, has been to kind of convince people that biking isn't an extreme sport. I think a lot of people, even cyclists included, think that biking is this big, tough, extreme sport. I'm a cyclist. I do this and I am tough for doing it. And it's like, no, biking is fun. It's, it's delightful. Like it's for everybody. Everyone should feel safe to ride their bike to wherever they would like to ride it, right? Whatever their range is, wherever the destinations are that they want to go. And then, again, in this country, we have the constraints of most of the infrastructure is oriented towards cars, and there might not be bike-friendly connections that people are willing or able to use. But I think the main impact that we need to make is a cultural one, where, again, that mindset shift of like, oh, I can just ride my bike to the supermarket. That's the big hump, I think, for people. Yeah.
Obviously, I'm just teeing you up.
I was simply going to ask what you see the challenges of bicycling through our community as are currently, and if you can speak to that. You said you can get on your bike path from where you are and ride to the experience, but there are, in my perception, a lot of not so friendly corridors. So someone who bikes a lot, I would be interested to hear your take on the immediate area so much.
Yeah. Because I was socialized in this like bike-friendly society, I have very little fear when I'm biking. Like it's just, again, it's one of those things where like if you grow up biking from real young and that's just normal to you, it stays normal. So I've actually really enjoyed biking in Essex Junction, but I'm also very much aware of the fact that there are certain barriers. I have roommates who say, I would bike to work. One works by the airport, but I can't because there's no bike path. I'm like, well, yeah, but there's a bike path for most of it. And why don't you just bike on the road for that segment that you can't do that? And that's a step too far. So what do we need to do? We need to make those connections, right? How can we connect to the existing bicycle infrastructure within the greater Chittenden County with the bicycle infrastructure we're building here in Essex Junction, right? So I'm thinking, obviously, and that's a big ticket item, but how do you get to Williston and connect to that so that you can also go to the commercial areas in Williston, as well as, having another way to go downtown? How can you connect to Winooski? How do you get to that, or Colchester, I guess? How do you get to that bike path there? And how do you find a solution for people where, we don't have to compromise too much on car through flow, but also can have that, safe option where guys like my roommate who are interested but are cautious will say, you know what, yes, I can bike to work, and I will because I feel safe enough to do so, right? So I'm saying, those key connections is what we need most in Essex Junction.
Unique perspective. I appreciate that. Thank you.
So I'll ask you two questions. One, because you mentioned the e-bike, and I hear occasionally from constituents talking about their concerns about e-bikes, especially at the speeds that they can travel these days and things like that. What are your thoughts about, because again, acknowledging the same thing that Tim recognizes, and I think the whole council does, is that there are definitely areas within the city that have difficulty for biking, and to be biking at those kinds of speeds probably brings a number of us to concern. So I wonder what your thoughts are about how we try to make it safe and allow this technology to continue.
Yeah, I think e-bikes have like a definition problem. So many different e-bike shaped objects are considered e-bikes. But within the US, we do have a pretty defined, okay, this is an e-bike and this is not an e-bike. And so at that point, you can already rule out those speed monster machines that you sometimes see rolling around where the person is like nominally rotating their legs and they're going 40 miles an hour. And it's just like, whoa, okay, that is not an e-bike. But then at the same time, when people see those bikes and those bikes are using the infrastructure, that's a problem, right? So that's a tough thing to handle. And I think that comes with the fact that it's new technology and we're still having trouble regulating these bikes coming in that, very much do not fit the definition of what an e-bike should be, which should be a bike where you have pedal assistant propulsion, right? As you pedal, you get a little extra boost and it allows you to go faster, which I do think in Vermont is like, for most people, it's the thing that you kind of need to use. Unless you're a real fanatical cyclist who loves the pain and loves to do the big climbs. Whoa, this is a very hilly area. And yeah, for me, I don't know, even just getting to downtown Burlington to climb back up to get here, that's a big workout if I don't have my e-bike to do it. So I recognize that there's definitely some safety challenges also in regards to batteries when it comes to e-bikes. And again, those really cheap $300 e-bikes that go 40 miles an hour from Amazon or from Temu, that's the problem. And I perceive that to be a macro issue. But I also acknowledge the fact that, we need to find local solutions to handle these things. And I don't have the answer for that. Because again, a lot of the time people are just buying these things off the internet and they're being kind of plopped into our infrastructure. So I think it's tough, but I do think we really need to embrace the proper e-bikes for what they are, which is an enabler, right? They will allow people to go by bike. And at the end of the day, those bikes are limited to the very fastest ones go 28 miles an hour, and that's not with a throttle. And I perceive that to be the speed that a fast cyclist can go. And so therefore you're still within the parameters of this is still a cyclist. And it's just, you turn everyone into very fast cyclists, which again is a really good thing because that makes bikes a more viable solution for the average person.
Last question that I have for you is, again, you acknowledge in your application, you've spoken to it already, you are part of Local Motion. So I'm just wondering if you perceive any conflict with that work and then participating on this committee.
Yeah. So I do not foresee that conflict. My work within Local Motion is very much not an advocacy centered, job. I mainly manage the kids program. And so therefore I'm in charge of managing the trailers that go through the state and get dropped off at schools. And so I'm mainly working with teachers, working the logistics of how do I manage these trailers. And so Local Motion already has a presence on the committee. That's Jack Evans, who is kind of like a consultant type figure. I don't interface with Jack that much. We are colleagues, but again, in that work capacity, I'm not pushing a certain agenda beyond what my own, opinions / perspectives would be. So I do not foresee a conflict there.
Thanks. Amber?
Thank you, Daniel. I think Regina mentioned earlier that we have another applicant that we're going to interview at the next meeting. So we're probably not going to make a decision tonight. We'll probably make a decision after the June 25th meeting. So the city staff will be in touch with you either way.
That sounds
Thank you for coming. Safe travels home. And feel free to stay. Lots of fun tonight. So. All right. Next up is Nathan. Capital Program Review. Hey,
I'm
Nathan.
here. Hello.
How's it going?
It's going well. Yeah, sorry I couldn't be in person tonight, but happy to join remotely.
No worries. So I start out with, is there anything on the application that you didn't put on the application that you like us to know?
I honestly don't recall exactly what I put on there, but lived in Essex Junction for a little over 4 years now. My wife and I, we had our first daughter last year, so that's been a nice whirlwind, and changing my perspective on sidewalks and all the fun things we get to talk about in the Capital Review Committee. But yeah, I've enjoyed my last 2-year term on the committee. I've also been part recently of the rebranding committee, which has also been interesting work. Yeah, I'd say that's it. I think, highlights over the past 2 years, I think the work we did around the local option tax policy. I, appreciated what we did there. And then just our kind of general revisement of prioritization for the different improvement programs. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Great. Any questions for us?
No, I maybe just, are there any reimagining of that committee or repurposing of that committee that you could foresee? It's a fairly limited scope that we kind of handle. Only meeting once a quarter, which honestly is pretty good for my busy life and workload. But, I'm just curious how you see the output of what that committee produces, if it's still delivering value, and if there's other kind of questions or other directives that committee could tackle. I think that'd be my only question.
Yeah. I don't see, I think it's a valuable committee, and I think, I've been on the committee, I don't know, 6, 7, I've lost all track of time.
Yeah.
But years. I've been on there for years, and so it's kind of ebbed and flows over the years where, some years we had a multitudes of projects, right? And so we
Yeah.
were prioritizing those projects and stuff. And so there was a lot more work, and that's why we had monthly meetings and stuff. And now it's just kind of, I guess I look at it like it's probably a good thing that we had to go to quarterly meetings, because we don't have
Yeah.
anything to talk about, because we do have a pretty lengthy capital plan, and it's nice to not continue to keep adding to it in some sense. But always open to thoughts about how there's ways to improve the committee, and what we're doing, but nothing that I can think of right now that we would be doing differently. But I do think there's always the potential that if things start picking up, that just say we
Sure.
get 3 projects, then we would have to meet more than once a month. But
Yeah, and that makes sense to me. And I've appreciated the kind of variability of the cadence, and as new projects come in, refreshing our kind of rubric for those. So yeah, that all makes sense to me.
thanks. Any other counselor questions?
I have one, and I'm just curious, thinking about, again, you've gone through this, you've been on this committee, you've participated in these discussions. I'm just curious if there might be a project that stands out in your mind that you think deserves more attention that maybe has not popped to the top of the list for whatever reason.
No, I mean, I can't think now of any kind of specific individual project, but I do think we do a good job of kind of generally prioritizing the types of projects, namely kind of things that impact quality of life, like sidewalks and, streets. A specific kind of area of sidewalk or street, nothing comes to mind, but I think generally I agree, and I'm on board with how we've kind of prioritized within those categories.
Thanks. Amber.
I think that's it from us, Nathan. I believe we are going to look at this committee tonight and make a decision. I think we are. Either way, someone will get in touch with you.
All right, you know how to find me.
Thank you. Have a good night.
All right, thanks everyone. Bye-bye.
All right, so next we've got the moderator role. So I believe Steve is in person with us, and then Zach couldn't make it tonight, so he'll be at the next meeting. So just as a reminder, I think, and Steve I think knows this as the current moderator. this this is new for us as an appointed role. This has always been an elected position. And with the charter change that we did last year before, this is now a position that the city council appoints and has been primarily used to do the, what we call the January meeting to discuss the budget, and then the annual meeting that we do right before the budget is gone to vote. So, Steve, I don't see you, but I know you're there. I saw you earlier. Anything you want to add to your application?
Yeah, I also can't remember what was written because it was a while ago. But I would just say, the position has changed a little bit because I don't have to deal as much with Robert's Rules of Order where people are making motions and such. But my primary goal has always been, since '03 when I was elected moderator, is to make sure every single person in the room in a meeting that I'm moderating that has something they want to express or a question they want to ask feels comfortable asking, that they're not like stressing out because they have to ask that question. I want them to feel comfortable and create an inviting atmosphere so people can express their thoughts or questions in any of the meetings. And anyway, that's what I've been doing, and that's what I would intend to continue to do, while at the same time keeping the meeting moving and all of that. So I don't know if anyone has any particular questions for me.
I do. But Tim, did you have?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I'm very familiar with Steve's method, so.
I appreciate that. That's why I'm going to ask this. That's why I'm going to ask these two questions. Stevie, just based on what you just said, right? Like, we want to create that environment by which the community can come out, listen, be heard, participate. And I still, like, after this last community meal that we had together in January, still heard that there were members in the community who had not spoken up, had not shared. And I was a little disappointed in that. And that's not on moderator. That's not on, I don't think that was on anything in particular, but because you have been in this role for so long, I am curious about your thoughts about ways that you might think that we can improve that experience, improve that environment so that people will feel more open to sharing. And then also your take on how we make those events themselves more engaging so we can get more people coming and participating.
Sure. No, I think those are good questions. I think you have to start with kind of laying the groundwork for people feeling comfortable and included, such that, like if we're thinking the January event where there's more people talking than, say, the informational meeting. And I think, we have the nice kind of pre-events where there's, the different activities and committees and things where people can kind of look through, and there's a lot of networking and sharing. And I think that's all a good start, but just kind of reminding people like, hey, this is, like ahead of time. It's like, hey, we're going to make it really easy. You shouldn't feel nervous, and just kind of like ahead of time, when we send out the newsletter or whatever, letting people know that this is coming up. You kind of have to say it multiple times. And then again, at the meeting, at the beginning, to remind people again, like, hey, we really want to hear from you. So like, don't hesitate, and kind of creating that openness. And then once it started, we have to, treat everybody in the right way so that if, when we address people, they ask a question, how we respond to them, all that, right? Other people are watching, right? And so they're like, oh boy, they gave that guy a hard time. I'm not saying you did, right? But if they see that and are thinking that, like, well, I'm not asking a question, right? So I think it's how the council conducts itself, how it answers questions, creates that openness, right? And then, and I try to do it as I'm, I try to remember people's names. I can't remember everybody's names, but I try and call people by name if I know them, again, to increase that comfort level and make it feel more just like a big living room as opposed to a big room. Anyway, so those are some of the things that I think that can be done that start long before the meeting happens and then throughout it. And then if people see that action over time, then they kind of get used to it and they know, oh, okay, I'm going to be able to say whatever and I'm not going to get beat up or made to look silly, or, people just don't want to look silly or feel like, why did you ask that question? So they're worried about being embarrassed or a variety of things that can happen. Does that help?
No, absolutely. And I'll take it one step further because based on what you said, and again, knowing the fact that you've sat on this side of the table over here as well, so you understand these roles and positions, what feedback would you give the council in the way, because you gave really great feedback about how we conduct ourselves at the table during the meeting, but I'm wondering if you have any feedback or recommendations you might give us about what we do before the meeting starts that can help to engage the community stronger.
Like at that meeting?
Yeah.
I think even, making an announcement, like before the meeting starts, like maybe like just before or just after it starts, just to remind people the point of the meeting is to gather public input. And we can't gather public input if the public isn't talking and asking questions or sharing observations. And so that, we rely on you, and we want to make sure everyone feels comfortable doing just that. So I think just, again, you have to say it multiple times in different ways and then conduct it in a way that it is comfortable.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Amber?
I think that's all we got, Steve. Thanks for coming. Same thing with the moderator position is that we have another applicant who couldn't come tonight, so we'll be in touch after that June 25th meeting. Thank you. And same to you. You can feel free to hang out. Lots of fun and excitement still to come. All right, Planning Commission, Diane Clemens, you're up. You're the next contestant. All right, what do you want to tell us that's not in your application?
I think I'm a known quantity. I don't think I really need to add anything more. In fact, usually I get people telling me don't do the full bio, just hi.
We do know you. We do know you. Do you have any questions for us?
Not at the moment. The planning commission is kind of an active sort of thing, so I'm sure we'll have a discussion in the next few months at some point.
I'm sure we will. Counselors?
It's the quietest Diane's ever been. I do have a question for you, Diane, because look, you've been a really important part of this process and a really important part of that committee. And I always really appreciate your institutional knowledge. So one of the things I want to ask you is, again, especially as we are thinking about how this community develops, not just for tomorrow, but for the next 50, 100 years. With all the work that you've done in the LDC, and I saw that in your application, really, having pride in the work that's gone there. But where do you see some efficiencies or some areas that we can put some attention to that can help us speed up our goal for more housing in this community?
Well, that seems to be the $10 million question for the entire state, not just Essex Junction. So Essex Junction, I guess you could say, doesn't have a lot of things that other communities have, like vacant buildings and unused factories and that sort of thing, where they've been allowed to rehab those. If we had one of those, I'd say, hey, let's start there. There are individuals who see the empty commercial spaces as a potential for housing. And quite frankly, I think our community would probably benefit more from having full commercial spaces versus those that are sitting, waiting for the next client. But that's not our decision as government unless we want to have chats with the owners of those buildings as to perhaps their motivation for letting it sit. I've had discussions in the past with commercial owners, and I've gotten back I'm still looking for the right client to rent this space. And that's their prerogative. I have nothing in my toolbox that can get them to move faster. One of the things that we could do is to get our community to understand the need to help others for finding housing. That if we had the quote mother-in-law apartments, the accessory apartments, having those come through if someone has that idea, if they want to come forward. We can't say you need to have one. It's more of, was this something you're thinking about? Which is a very low-key way of having infill versus plopping something new down and just here you go. I think a lot of our residents wouldn't particularly care to have something plopped on them. They're a lot more friendly when somebody says, hey, the kids need an apartment, blah, 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 and suddenly there's an accessory apartment. So, I mean, I think a lot of people are friendly that way. It would be a lot more agreeable to having something of that happen. And we have places that are going to, at some point in time, have some major development on them here in the downtown. So it's just a matter of getting the financing and whatever else. There's a lot of things that have come to the fore with the state government. I'm kind of looking forward to see if Essex Junction can qualify for the CHIP. That might be a nice way of getting a development going. But as opposed to being discriminated against by the state, and usually doesn't allow established places to get TIFs. They have this bias against saying, oh, you've already gotten. It's like, well, we don't. We're just like everybody else. We could use a little extra help, period.
You believe there's efficiency or streamlining that can be done within the LDC itself? I mean, there's been a lot of work there, a lot of amendments and adjustments, especially to meet the requirements that have come down from the state. But I'm just wondering because I can imagine as a layman, which I am, trying to read that even for our work here, and then trying to be mindful of that coming into a community and then needing to build with that all in mind in some form or fashion. I'm wondering if it's causing if you believe that in some ways it may be causing a hindrance to our ability to build faster.
Actually, I would say that our LDC is probably more encouraging than some others because we do work with someone that wants to come in and develop or remodel or something or other. So, awful part about rules and regulations and state law, which unfortunately the LDC becomes part of. Some parts can't be efficiently done, although I will say that having it electronically available and having things linked to, what might make it a lot more user-friendly than for the average person than someone who's been doing it for a while. So we'll see if we can accomplish that. But as Steve mentioned, need public input. So, I mean, I have gone on social media when people are chatting about things and I'll say, hey, you know what? You could send me a note. Come visit the meeting. I invited, I'm not sure who was all on that last social media post, but I figured I would keep trying and saying, hey, the meeting's on Thursday, at such and such a time and such a place, and come on down and have a chat, so, it's one thing in the grocery store, it's another thing in a room like this. So,
I appreciate the feedback. Thank you. I think that helps a lot. Amber.
I think that's all we have. Thanks, Diane. Oh,
You said you
that's
hope that-
Marcus. Go ahead, Brian.
You said you hope that we can qualify for the chip?
well, what ends up being is that chips are individually qualified.
Define the term for me, I guess that's what.
CHIP.
Housing
Investment
program,
program? Yeah,
perhaps?
yeah,
It's brand new, hot off the presses. It's actually not available yet.
No, it's not available. It has to get passed, but it's in the works, or it has to be signed, I believe. It's been passed. It's like TIF, except on an individual project basis versus a area. In other words, TIFs in the past had been, let's say, downtown. And anything within the downtown would have qualified. In this case, the idea is that an individual project would qualify. And therefore, the developer or constituency of that area, that are doing this, has more of a chance of getting that qualification and getting that tax relief through to promote development.
Great. Thank you.
Community Housing and Infrastructure Program.
There you go.
It's
I figured if I didn't know what it was, then there would be people watching who also did, so.
well, it's brand new. I mean, I think the governor has yet to. It's passed, but the governor has yet to sign it. So.
Yep. Thanks, Diane. Appreciate it. We'll be in touch. Finn? Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Well,
Here.
thanks for applying. We're very excited to see a student applying and interested in our committees. Have you had a chance to go to any of the planning commission meetings?
I have not, but I have watched some of the videos on YouTube because I know that there's like a live feed that goes on there. So I have watched some of those.
Okay. Do you have any questions about the committee or any questions for the city council about the role?
So like what exactly is the role like? Like what do you do in it to like help with the community? Like what kind of goes like behind the scenes?
So Diane, who's sitting behind you, who just talked, is the current planning commission chair. I sat for a number of years on the planning commission as well. It's changed over the years since we separated from the town. But really what you're looking as the global, and Diane will throw things at me from there if I'm wrong, but you're looking at the global, how the community should build out, how the community should look, feel. In the past, you were looking at individual projects, but that is now a DRB function, not a planning commission function. So we've been talking about this, the land development code, which is really the rules and regulations of the city. So you'd have a role in revising that and the comprehensive plan. Anything I'm leaving out, Diane? No, that's it. Okay. They meet monthly. So I think that's it. That answer your question? Okay.
So-
Yes.
So one thing that I think is helpful to know is the Planning Commission prepares, like Amber said, two main products. One is really a visionary document of where we would like the city to look. And that lays out a vision. The land development code is the rules. So you have this idea, the land development code sets the rules for what that would look like. Then when anybody wants to come in and develop a property, they've got to meet those rules. And to get that approval, you go to the Development Review Board. the really exciting thing I think about the Planning Commission is a lot of times developments don't necessarily get a ton of attention until they're in front of the Development Review Board and people start seeing that they're going through this process and getting approved. The Development Review Board can't really change the rules. They can just look at this application and see if they meet the rules. It's the Planning Commission that can actually think about the rules and anything that you want to change. A hot one, I think, that will be coming before us is if the building heights should be higher. So it's a pretty exciting place to be, I'd say.
So it's like zoning laws,
Yes, exactly.
that sort of thing?
Yes.
All right.
And the role of the Planning Commission is to develop those documents and then hand them off to the council with a
Right.
recommendation of what.
Mm-hmm.
Now, knowing, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so now knowing that, Finn.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? It's a unique, but I just want to take a minute to acknowledge it's a unique perspective to have a young individual sitting before us wanting to get involved in local government.
Yeah.
So I just want to take a minute and acknowledge that. And
Yeah.
it's something that we've talked about collectively as a group is how do we get more engagement from our youth. So I'm excited to see that you sit here, but I'm also curious now to know what you think, having just heard all of this.
Yeah. Like what I think.
How do you feel about the potential of being seated with the Planning Commission?
It sounds like a fun, like, side thing that you're able to do. And, like, as someone my age, being able to bring, like, this sort of young perspective. Because, like, I grew up in Essex Junction. I saw, like, a bunch of the developments that went on with, like, building the McGillicuddy's building on Pearl Street and Park Street. And seeing all of that got me interested in doing the Planning Commission.
It's awesome.
Ryan, did you have anything? Ben, I have a question for you, and I got to reiterate the same thing. It's so great to see you here applying, especially for a committee like this. And I got to say, I'm kind of jealous because as I even think about the work that I do, I know that the impact that the Planning Commission does and the work that we do doesn't just set the stage for today, tomorrow. It sets the stage for 50 years from now.
Right.
And for a young man like yourself to apply in a role like this, you can participate in making rules and developing the vision for the future
Yeah.
and be here to see it. So I'm jealous. So thank you again for putting your name in. But let me ask you on that particular note, because again, growing up in Essex Junction, when you think about Essex Junction, the look, the feel, kind of the characteristics that make Essex Junction unique or what it is, what do you think stands out for you? Like if you were to tell a friend or tell somebody who is not from here, what are the things that you would call out about Essex Junction that makes it?
Well, we are the newest city in Vermont, which is first thing. And I remember like seeing a news video of the Vermont Historical Society, how like we were called the Junction because like a bunch of different like railroads from like all around like connected here. And that's what like brought people in here. So that like helped. So that's what I would say. Yeah.
I appreciate that a great deal. So again, thank you very much. And I do want to ask a side question, if you don't mind, because, and this is going to play into a follow-up comment, but what's your favorite book?
Favorite book?
Yeah, your favorite book. What a book that you like to read, or a book you've read that you really enjoy?
High pressure question.
My favorite book has been the Diary of a Wimpy Kid series. That's been,
Love that series.
yeah.
Great series.
I watched all the movies from that, so.
Perfect. I only bring it up because this work does require a fair amount of reading. It is not going to be as entertaining as a Diary of a Wimpy Kid. I'll tell you that right now. But again, the influence that the Planning Commission has on the future of this community is really important. So again, thank you so much for coming out.
Like, I'm like a part of that future, so that's what.
Thank you. Amber?
She just got kicked out. I see. She's
Oh.
trying to rejoin. Sorry about that. Give her 1 second.
Yeah, I don't need to be this popular. Man in the room speaking is.
I think there's an opportunity to redevelop your name. Maybe put a big town.
Sorry, guys, I lost my internet connection for some reason, so my apologies. It was not the cat. I can promise you that. Are you all done? I missed your question answer period, but I can go back and look at it, Marcus. So did anybody else have any other questions for Finn or?
I think we're good. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Finn. We'll let you go home so you can enjoy the rest of your evening, but you also can feel free to hang out if you would like. And then we will be in touch because we have a couple of other applications at the next meeting.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy your night. All right, so I think the last interview is Leslie for Tree Advisory. Welcome, Leslie. You've already heard my whole spiel, but anything you want to add to your application and any questions for us?
I know I was hesitating on putting in my application because I was working on the Master Gardener program and I didn't want to say I'd done it until I'd completed it. And in the end, I don't remember what I put on that and I don't know if that made it to my application or not. But I did finish the UVM Master Gardener program, which makes me an intern for the moment.
Congratulations.
That's fantastic.
And I don't have any questions
Okay.
for you.
Counselors?
I just wanted to take an opportunity to talk about this emerald ash borer that we have. And we've all seen now as the leaf out has happened, especially on the median to Pearl Street, some of the conditions of some of those trees. And I know that it's been a big focus of the city to kind of work through, or the tree advisory to work through those trees and the removal and the replanting. And I wanted to, if you can just take a minute and talk about some of the thought that goes in. I know there are some fresh trees that have been planted by Hiawatha or along West Street, as I've seen Public Works out with the water bags. So I'm wondering if you can just take a minute and talk about the impact of the beetle on the work that you've been doing, and how you see what lessons we've learned kind of from that.
Wow. I'm not the expert on this. You get to
Well,
see the
I was
experts in a
kind
bit.
of
but
eyeballing Warren.
I'll tell you what I know.
Yeah, if you would speak to your piece of it, I think is.
Because mostly I feel like a newbie on the tree committee and I'm just learning as I go all the time. But I know that it's been a big part of the tree committee's focus for the last several years. They kind of knew this was coming. And so there is that area in Essex of Wilkinson, Tyler, Lavoy. Down in that area, it's full of, when they built the community there, they put in ash trees everywhere. And so I know the last several years we've been trying to slowly take down trees and replant so that it would be a process and you wouldn't have to just clear cut them all and have this empty space. I know that's been a big focus. So we've been working, we have the nursery space up at the Bob Nursery. So we can get more inexpensive bare root trees and grow them up. And many of those trees are going to replace ash trees that are coming down.
And how do you said you're a newbie now to this committee. How do you like it? How do you feel about it?
I like it.
Yeah, as a master gardener intern, you must, it's like, it's got to be right in your wheelhouse, right?
Right. When I said this last year, I'm sure, but when I was at a meeting and sat at a table with Nick and I was like, we have a tree committee. I didn't know that. That's the closest thing to green space community we've got, and I was thrilled to join.
Appreciate it.
Leslie, I've got a couple of questions for you. So I'd like to get your take on what you think the most important green space is in our community and what is the most underutilized space in our community.
Most important and the underutilized. I mean, I think it's great that like Maple Street Park has so much tree shade, green space. I wish there was more of an emphasis on personal property too, even. And a lot of the new development that's going up could use better green space in front of it.
Thank you. I appreciate those answers. Amber?
I didn't finish answering your
Sorry.
question about the lessons we've learned, which the main lesson we learned is that you shouldn't plant one kind of tree in an entire neighborhood. You should plant a
Neighborhoods, yeah.
variety,
Down through there.
large variety.
Yep. Thank you, Leslie. So we have another applicant for the tree advisory as well, so we're not going to make a decision tonight. Same speech I just gave, but we'll be in touch. Feel free to hang out. All right, guys, I think that takes us back to DRB with Maggie and Dylan's applications. So I think we need to make a decision if we're going to have counselors interview them outside of the regularly scheduled meeting and then come back for a decision about whether we're going to reappoint them or if we just want to move forward with appointing them based on their applications. And we don't have Dylan's application tonight. So I would be okay with just reviewing applications, but I don't know how it works.
Existing members.
Correct. Yep.
I would be okay with that.
You all get an objection.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm happy to give him a call too. I have time, so. Whatever.
We're gonna hold off on that decision this week anyways, because we don't have Dylan's application. So we can bring that to the next meeting. I think that's it for the committee appointments, and then we'll go into executive session later in the meeting. So next is gonna be update from the Tree Advisory Committee. And I believe we saw Warren, and I think I heard Nick is there. Come on up to the mic. Take it away, guys.
Having us tonight, we can talk a little bit more about the work we've been doing. I think you saw the annual report that I try and submit every January, which gives a balance of that year. And, really want to have questions from you about questions you might have of what we're doing, progress we're making. But I can give you a quick overview of what's happened just in this year of what we've done.
Sure.
So we have had planted another 41 trees or so, again, mostly focusing down on in Asheville, as I call it, and making great headway there. We had a grant that was planted 18 of those. And I want to just give you a little idea about what the nursery means in terms of saving dollars for the Junction. That grant was for 18 trees and it was $18,000. So it was $1,000 a tree. And we are able to get a tree in the ground after we take care of it for 2 years for about $150, $180. So we're really able to extend what we've been able to do with the budget that we have. And it requires, volunteers. There are some volunteers in the committee working there tonight. And we meet there at least once a month, taking care of them. And so Branch Out Burlington has been a terrific asset for us, and it's been an opportunity to get residents involved too, working there from the Junction. And Branch Out Burlington really appreciates our volunteers. We did 2 Arbor Day events at the schools that included about 160 children. And we do that every year, not necessarily that large amount, but with the change that's happening with one of the schools closing, we tried to do sort of a coordination of these children going to their new schools and such, and it was very successful. We were rewarded a Tree City USA delegation. This is our 10th year of that. And again, that has certain criteria that you have to meet, one of them being a per capita amount that the city is willing to spend on the nursery, the trees, everything that goes on, maintenance of trees. And so thank you for doing that in the past many years. We did plantings at Maple Street and Callahan Parks, working closely now with Parks and Rec as they're trying to improve their campus. Great relationship with Public Works. We couldn't be doing the work without their help. And I think it really is two-way, because any phone calls from residents, either Terry, Ricky, or Jamie, throws them right to us. And so Warren and I generally go out and talk with the homeowners, advise the Public Works, and make a decision on what needs to be done, or just talk to the homeowner of an issue they've got. Yeah. Let's see. Problems that I see, I think we're doing a great job of trying to reforest the city. So much of the work is happening down in that Wilkins and Hayden streets, so we're not able to do as much in other parts of the community right now, but we just don't have the bandwidth to do it. And we're trying to reach out to some of the property owners on private property, say when we have trees available, we can hopefully make them available to you, But our focus is on the right-of-way. Those are the trees that the city's responsible for. I think one of the issues that we're seeing is, as we are building and the downtown core is changing so quickly, one of the things I feel is getting left out is green spaces there. And what do we want our community to look like down the road? And certainly, a lot of the strategic plans and charrettes that we've had, there's been such a focus from community members of having green spaces, pocket parks, some sort of green infrastructure that softens that concrete area. And I would like to see the Design Review Board enforce a little bit more about applicants to do more to make their planting successful. I'm not sure how to do it because we're building right to the lot lines, and landscaping is always an afterthought. And so if you look down that corridor, they're kind of pathetic, what you're seeing of a lot of dead trees. And we would much rather see those trees removed out of there than have something sitting there that's just hanging on. And whether there's a way to try and move that building back so you have more sidewalk space and create sort of a partnership with the developer and the city, because the city wants to see this. At least the residents did. And we're going to have to make more of an effort to make this work. And it's going to cost some money to do it, certainly, the infrastructure down below to make these trees succeed. But there's stormwater issues that we can gain from it as well. And I know we're pushing housing, but I think we also have to look at the housing and the amenities for the people living downtown, that they have a quality of life there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Warren, that I kind of took up the oxygen there for a little bit.
No, that's right. We work with the planning department, and we weigh in on a lot of the development. And it's, you know, we're as an advisory group trying to do what we can to work with the planning department here, with landscape plans and so on. But then there's, okay, it's getting it planted, getting it taken care of. And then what happens 2-3 years later when stuff starts failing around these properties? I think there's ways through the code that can be addressed, and maybe in there, but it's the follow-up, and a lot of it has to do with code enforcement, which is something I know you know about, maybe working on down the road. But those it's really important to downtown. One of the questions that you asked Leslie was, where do you see us needing more green infrastructure, and how do you get there? Well, obviously it's our park system. And we've been working with the Parks Director and their maintenance staff to plant more trees in the parks. So we did, last fall, we did some more work with them in Maple Street Park. And we just did one tree at Cascade this year. We did several last year. So we're working with that. But also in the heart of the downtown, we don't have a lot of space downtown. The only space we have is in front of these big buildings that are going up. And if that's not created well enough and enough greenery is put in, which we're seeing a lot of concrete, but working with the developer, they're going to want to get as much in that space as they can for their development. But there's got to be some give and take on what the city wants to see, what their residents want to see. They want an inviting green space when they walk around downtown. So anyway, I think we've done a very good job with the tree committee, working with the residents and working with city staff to enhance our urban forest in the city. And as we enhance that, it's going to require follow-up maintenance. We're able to do some of that work ourselves, and with pruning exercises and stuff, and we get the committee involved with that. And then we also subcontract some of it out when the trees get a little bit bigger and we need to do the training. The training is key, so when these trees are new for the first 10 years, they need to have this training so that as they grow and down the road, we can leave them alone and we're not spending a lot of money on it. So it's the upfront that gives you the benefits down the road with that. So Emerald Ash Bar was brought up. Tim is correct. When you go out West Street Extension and you're heading towards Susie Wilson Road, the first bunch of ash trees that are mixed in with those maples are all infected with EAB. When we get down towards Susie Wilson Road, I'm not seeing much of it there, but they're so close, they're going to get it. So all of those ash trees are going to go. So one of the questions that goes through my mind, do we go back in and plant that? Or with what's going on with the future of that piece of road, do we not? Because we know it's going to change. At least years ago, I knew it was going to change, but nothing's happened in recently. But I think Chittenden County Regional Planning and the community leaders want to see that happen. So that's going to change the whole way that road works. Have no idea when that's going to happen. But I know driving on that
Anyone's
road,
best guess.
horrible.
I don't think any of us do, but
Well, one of the plans earlier was to remove the whole median.
Yeah.
And that was going to be a
Bounce it
bike,
out. Yeah.
yeah, bike lanes and all. So said, okay, well,
Yeah.
they're going anyway. And the state, we thought would take them down, but now we're going to be forced to remove those ash trees in the median. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, we've already
project is-
talked to, excuse me?
That project is technically in the FY26 capital plan. So we are looking at that right now, both through some more scoping at CCRPC and Jeff, Ricky, and Chris, and trying to sort through what's a reality of what can be done there with the money that we have.
That just to fix the road or do the complete rebuild?
In theory, the complete rebuilds, but we don't have money to do a complete and total rebuild. So we'll see what actually happens. But also on the council's agenda tonight is repaving, and that which direction? Outbound, that's a good way to say it. Thank you, Jeff. Outbound section of Pearl Street in between West Street Extension and Susie Wilson will get paved in that bid. If it's approved tonight.
Is there any funds from the state or the feds that's going to assist with that? Or not?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it is technically their responsibility.
Anyway, that's upsetting to me, but we'll leave it at that. Took a drive yesterday to northern New York to pick up something, and I always like to go up to the Champlain Islands. And if any of you have been up to the Champlain Islands this year, I'm talking all the way to Ross's Point. That is what ash borer is going to do to the forested land. We are so fortunate in the village that we don't have hardly any, to my knowledge, native ash. So the only thing we are dealing with is what was planted in the developments. So imagine a place like that where you've got to deal with it. I've talked to the other towns around and what they're dealing with, roadside ash trees. So anyway, I breathe easy knowing that we don't have to spend money on that, which is.
Guys, the other night, WCAX TV ran a story on the beech tree leaf disease. Is that something, I'm not sure, do we have any beech trees planted in the right of ways? Is this something that could be another problem that we're gonna have to tackle?
It will not be.
Okay, I like to hear that answer.
They're typically, if they're planted anywhere, they're either in Essex Junction, they would have been in developments where they had built homes around them, so they'd be on private property.
Okay,
They are not a tree that you would plant for a street tree, so we don't plant beech trees. But beech bark disease has been around for a long time, and that's all over the place. That was one thing that was mentioned, but the leaf disease is something brand new. Right now, there is no control for it. So we won't have to worry about it as far as the community goes. But if you have one on your property, you want to be looking out for that.
gotcha.
But it's new.
Okay,
It's a new disease to the state.
thank you. Counselors, does anybody have any questions for Warren or Nick?
I'd like to ask a clarifying question on the process, because as you spoke earlier about one of your concerns in the process with developers. So I'm gonna verbalize what I heard and you tell me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like in the process, while you're an advisory committee and you're not a legislative committee, it seems like there is an opportunity by which you advise in that process, maybe to the DRB. And so as that application goes through, you're giving advice to the DRB. We have rules on the books from the LDC. And then these projects are being passed and then they're being built and all that. So if I got all of that correct, is what you're saying that projects that were submitted that passed by you and went through the DRB do not end up getting built to those specifications, which include landscaping concepts based on my understanding?
Not really. It's more the fact that we would suggest these buildings have a certain percentage that they are supposed to put towards landscaping. And landscaping, it also includes some hardscape, benches, things like that. We are suggesting with some of those funds that they make the improvements and it's underground, to do the work underground that will have the soil volume for these trees to really do well. Because right now they're planted in what we call the little rectangular casket. They grow for a while and then they die. And trees need volume, and there are ways to do that structurally under the sidewalk, still supports the sidewalk, allows more water to flow into it, and they can do well. They can be expensive to do.
Yeah, that's some of the pushback is the cost.
Yeah. And there's one particular developer who we did push on this many years ago. And I will say that the installation was not done correctly. And when this is brought up again, he says they don't work. So, and I think that truth be known, they do work if done properly. And I can cite examples of where downtown areas where they've done well. Well, Warren he knows well.
So the other thing that is working well with the planning department is they've got us hooked up with Google Docs so that we can see the developments that come in. Nick and I look at them, and we look at the landscaping, and we are able to make suggestions for species of trees, for example, to get the right ones in the right place. We'll make suggestions back to them so that they can go back to the developer and change it on their landscape plan so that we know we're getting the right tree that should be there and not one that we know is going to fail. Some of the larger developments where they get a landscape designer involved, they usually turn out pretty good. We don't have to do a lot with it. It's more of the smaller ones where we have some issues.
Since I don't have the LDC memorized, can anybody generalize, like, what is our requirement kind of like for green space with developments in the community? And I'm also looking, I don't know, Diane, if you happen to know this information either. I'm just kind of curious.
Chris is online actually, and looks like he's super eager to answer that question.
Well, as somebody who works with the land development code every day, I remember a few more pieces of it, but still not. I haven't gotten it memorized. There is a landscaping requirement of it's between 2 and 3% depending on project size, and developers that are not going to be able to meet that sometimes have the option of paying the city the difference. But some of this is also based on a self-reported figures about estimates of construction costs and estimates of landscaping costs. And, I think it's a little bit difficult to know if we're totally on track for to reach that percentage for some of these projects, but we do give it a good try.
Set on a project, and again, I'll have to put this in a term that I think I can ingest into my brain, and maybe others will understand too, is looking at a project like the property at Pearl and Park. What is 2% of that particular project? Because off the top of my head, I'm trying to think, what is the greenery there? And I can't think of it right off. There might be a couple of little sparse trees there, but
yeah, it ends up being typically for these larger projects, like $200,000-$300,000. When it comes to having to do subsurface improvements like silver cells, which is actually the intervention that was just mentioned by Warren for downtown spaces to make sure the soil doesn't get squished and still gets the water. That can get pretty expensive pretty quickly. And then there are other elements of landscaping that's that's not related to trees that sometimes counts. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll leave it at that. Tim, Brian?
I just wanted to take a minute and acknowledge the vast knowledge that comes out of this advisory committee. And I was struck by just a statement in our packet. It says over the last 10 years, that 325 trees have been planted throughout the city. And that does includes 32 that were planted along the Crescent Connector. And I know that there have been instances in right-of-ways that involves desirable black walnut species of trees where they're not comfortable being trimmed by regular basis, that have been reached out, and you guys have assisted with that. And so I just want to take a minute and really acknowledge, we've said that you're an advisory committee, but there's a tremendous wealth of knowledge that comes from this group. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Thanks, Tim. Brian? Okay.
Just know that I see some hands up in the room.
You see hands up in the room. Okay. I will take and entertain some public comment.
All these children, they gave them all the opportunity to put a shovel of dirt into where the tree was planted. They were so excited that they were planting a tree over at Fleming, to represent the school that was closing. You were very patient with them. And it's just like sometimes children appreciate trees more than adults do. They're just so excited about it. We painted rocks. And we told them that the rocks were gonna go around the tree. They've been asking and asking. Today, I just took my class over, the third grade, and they were so proud of setting their rocks down that they painted around the tree. And, I just want you to know the impact that you had. And it's really appreciated.
Well, we're trying to train these future tree stewards.
Yep.
It's all about that. Right.
Thank you so much for that comment. Steve? Please.
Steve Eustace. So I think some of the thoughts that were brought, and I also want to thank the committee. I think they do a great job. A couple of the topics brought up this evening on green space and all that. I think two of the things is kind of guiding what's get planted a little bit more and where, and I brought up, and Diane will remember in the one planning commission meeting, where if you look at 197 Pearl, and they planted a whole bunch of bushes around the fire hydrant. And what is that going to accomplish? They got to come down in a few years when they get bigger because you need to get to the fire hydrant. And to try and guide a little bit more on what makes sense and what the community wants and not what somebody thought. And then I think holding the people to the fire, if they need to have a certain thing planted, if they kill it, they need to replace it, because of lack of preparation, lack of care after it's planted. I see so many times where, I've watched the planning commission over the years and now the development review board. I've watched so many projects come through and we've gotten some plantings, and then like the owner just like, and then it dies in a few years, and even if they just spent like a hint, like if they knew they were on the hook to keep replanting, I think they would do a little more effort. So I think that goes into code enforcement to do that. And again, in what gets planted, like my whole neighborhood, the planning commission back in the mid-90s said what trees were going to get planted there. And the person did not plant them. And I alerted the village, and none of those people work here now, so that's fine. And the village decided they weren't going to do anything about it. And now the tree committee's done a wonderful job trying to deal with what happened there. But the planning commission did their job at the time, and then we didn't do the code enforcement later to make sure that plans were followed through with on landscaping and what was supposed to be there and all of that. So it's not just sitting in the meeting, but doing that after. And so I just wanted to add that in because I think a lot of good topics tonight, and I think everybody's like going down the right thing. We just want to get all the way to the 1 yard line.
Right.
And then drop the ball at that point. So anyway.
Can make one comment about that too, is the fact that the land development code that says that those plantings are supposed to be maintained in perpetuity. And so you can just go down in front of the 2 shopping complexes there, the trees that have died, those have never been replanted. And you can go to various, as Steve was saying, developments, recent developments where we should be saying, we've got pictures, we know the landscape plan was there, you've got to bring it back. And make that, and that may, as he said, encourage them to take care of the properties when they're coming in.
Yeah. Thanks, Nick. Is there anybody else with their hand up in the room? Okay. All right. Thank you guys. That's a lot of useful information. Appreciate all the wealth of knowledge and work you guys are doing. Feel free to hang out. Or also go home and go to bed. All right, we are shifting gears to discussion and consideration of regional future land use map and Tier 1B Act 250 exemption status. Regina, you want to? Oh, Chris is going to take it? Okay. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, so there's a memo in your packets that's about this. I'm going to kind of go backwards here. The one specific ask we have for the city council is about Tier 1B status, but there are kind of 3 related things that's better introduced by CCRPC. Taylor Newton from the CCRPC is here, and I'm going to pass the time to him.
Thanks, Chris.
Through the chair.
Hi, folks. I'm Taylor Newton with CCRPC. I'm the Planning Program Director at CCRPC. I'm pinch hitting for Sarah Muskin, who's the planner that's been working with the Essex Junction Planning Commission on these topics. She's on vacation this week, but I will try my best to fill in. As Chris mentioned, you have a memo in your packet, and that memo talks about 3 different topics. 1, the regional future land use map itself, 2, Tier 1B, and then 3, the regional and municipal housing targets. I'd like to start on number 3, actually, the regional and municipal housing targets. I don't think we have much to talk about tonight regarding those targets. I very much appreciate the joint letter from the Essex Junction Planning Commission and City Council back in May, generally in support of those targets. And I very much appreciate the challenges that were cited in that letter. They're very much challenges that we also see as a regional planning commission to try to accomplish those targets. And so with that, I'd like to move on to talk about the map in Tier 1B, but I'll leave a moment to talk about the targets if anyone has any questions.
You're all set. Go ahead.
All right. So hearing none, let's talk about the map. Has the city council was briefed by our executive director, Charlie Baker, about Act 181 and the regional future land use map back in the fall, correct? All right.
Yes.
And so whoever has control of the Zoom, would you allow me to share my screen real quick? There we go. Second. All right. Are folks familiar with this graphic?
Yes.
Yes. All right. So you guys know that we have 11 categories that we are able to use to create the new regional future land use map in order to comply with Act 181. I imagine you also know that in Essex Junction, we only use 3 of these categories. There's downtown center, there is planned growth area, and then there's rural conservation, which is pretty much those areas that are floodplain or are perpetually conserved. You likely already know that your downtown center converts into a center in the new designation program, state designation program. So that replaces the village center you currently have now. And then planned growth areas, which is the majority of Essex Junction, will be eligible or will be a part of the new state neighborhood designation program. And so a lot broader geography of Essex Junction will be enabled, will be included in a state designation program in the future with the adoption of this map. And that's a positive for Essex Junction. Rural conservation, no benefits come along with that, and there are no Act 250 jurisdictional changes that happen with rural conservation. But there are Act 250 jurisdictional changes that are possible with downtown center and with planned growth area. And so both downtown center and planned growth area are categories where Tier 1B exemption is possible. And so Tier 1B exemption is essentially an allowance for all development of, or all projects that include 50 units or less in terms of housing to be developed without an Act 250 permit. And then both those areas are also eligible for Tier 1B. That's full exemption from Act 250. Tier 1B, which we'll talk about tonight, is simply an opt-in, passing a resolution as a city council to let the regional planning commission know that you'd like to opt in, you'd like these areas to be subject to a limited exemption from Act 250. Tier 1A is possible, but not until the regional plan is approved by the new Land Use Review Board. That will not be until June or July 2026. Once the regional plan is approved, Essex Junction would be able to apply on your own to the Land Use Review Board to receive Tier 1A exemption. A lot more to know about Tier 1A exemption, and we're certainly ready to have that conversation when the time comes. But tonight, it's really about Tier 1B. Any questions on the graphic before I move to share the map?
Nope.
All right. Let me stop sharing that screen. I'm going to move over to the other screen. And so here we are with the proposed regional future land use map for Essex Junction. And so you'll see here, the dark purple is the downtown center. This geography is definitely expanded from the former village center designation that you've had with the state. We've tried to incorporate a lot of the area that's covered by that TOD master plan that the city is currently working on. Not all of it, though. And I've talked a bit with Chris about that. You know, our reasoning is that, you know, that TOD master plan hasn't been incorporated yet into the city plan. And, you know, there isn't a lot of support right now in the city plan in terms of future land use districts on your own future land use map to support extension of the center further west. We're very open to, once you guys work on that city plan next couple of years and maybe amend your own city map, future land use map, that you work with us to make those changes here on our regional map, just to truly reflect your own local planning decisions. Surrounding that core, surrounding that downtown center, we have planned growth area. Planned growth areas in Chittenden County generally are those areas that have access to water and wastewater, and have some level of walk-bike connectivity to a center, either a downtown center or a village center. And so that's almost all of Essex Junction. It's a very walkable, compact community. And then lastly, we have rural conservation, mostly along your rivers, notably the Winooski River. No Act 250 benefits there, no designation benefits there. With that, we're right now working with our long range planning committee here at CCRPC over the next few weeks to finalize or to do a review of the map so that committee feels comfortable making a recommendation to our board to take a look at the map in mid-July. So right now is one of our last times that we can talk about making any changes to the map. Does the city council have any particular geographic areas you want to take a look at or change?
I do have a question, and I want to first say I appreciate the extension of the downtown area right in the downtown. But I do want to challenge the assertion you're making concerning Pearl Street and going beyond the expo. Can you restate that and explain? Because based on the conversations we have had, it is my assumption that the council has shown great interest in this particular corridor, the whole length of it, as part of our TOD, our master plan, looking at this, because as we talk about the redevelopment of Essex Junction, it hinges on the core at Five Corners and then these entry gateways into our community, of which Pearl Street is the biggest and probably, most known within this particular community.
Yeah, good question. I hear that. I agree with that. But also as a regional planning commission, we have to go to the land use review board and justify our map, right? And right now, our staff assessment is that the city plan and your description of your future land use districts kind of west of this along that Pearl Street corridor don't talk about a mix of uses at high density in the way that I think you're likely to in the future when you bring in a lot of the findings and the work you've done as a part of that TOD master plan. The city plan hasn't quite caught up. And so we are being conservative here. I think we're particularly being conservative because there's a lot of focus on these centers and the boundaries of these centers statewide. And then when we have centers that look pretty linear, I think they're going to have a lot of scrutiny on them. And we are going to have to justify to the LURB, the Land Use Review Board, why the boundaries are the way they are. And they're going to look at municipal plans possibly. I think the other reason why, in speaking with Chris, that I want to restrict the boundaries here is that in terms of the benefits that the city will receive by being a center or a neighborhood in the state designation program, those benefits are very comparable. They're almost the same. And so there's very little potential downside in terms of state designation benefits to just having that area remain planned growth area for now, taking a couple years, incorporating that TOD work into your city plan, and then having us amend the regional plan. I'll also say too that it's almost certain that CCRPC will amend our regional plan in 2028. That's because we have to adopt a new metropolitan transportation plan in that year and a new comprehensive economic development strategy that year. Both those sub plans that are a part of our regional plan expire in 2028. And so we're playing it conservative. I see very little downside to the city in doing so. And we can be really responsive to the city in a few years when we amend our plan and after you amend the city plan.
Yep. Are there any other questions for Taylor, Tim, Brian?
None on this side.
Okay. I don't have any. I believe that there is Chris, did you want to add anything before I ask about the motion?
I guess something interesting. I feel like I should point this out. It's a bit of a chicken and egg issue here with the regional land use map and the city's future land use map. Taylor's reasoning is that the city's future land use map doesn't currently support the higher densities and mix of uses in the corridor, and that will likely change it. But we also do have to make the city's future land use map is supposed to align or at least be compatible with the regional future land use map. I think there's enough wiggle room though within the planned growth area, between the planned growth area and the the centers areas that we could probably continue to morph the Pearl Street corridor and the land use planning there, so that we could potentially extend this centers designation in the future. But it is something that sticks out to me. But there is a motion prepared in your packets, and that is associated with resolution for Tier 1B status.
Okay. Thanks.
Prepared to read it, Amber, if you wish.
Yeah, I will, I think Regina had some, but I will also open it up to public comment real quickly. If anybody had anything, anybody in the room, anybody online.
Diane would like to speak.
Okay, you got
Can you come up to
2
the mic?
minutes. Go ahead.
I don't think I need to take that much.
Microphone. Thank you.
So, planning commission met a while ago. We looked at the map that you just saw. We asked the questions about, wait a minute, what about the, the Pearl Street piece? We did that. Now, the one part I would say is that because we will be doing the comprehensive plan discussions in the next year and a half, so that you can approve it in 2027 before it expires. So it's not that far out. So by that point in time, we will have that decision points made, hopefully, and will be incorporated in our city plan. So we will be all set for dovetailing into the regional plan in 2028. So everything will line up. The Planning Commission did have Chris and Sarah there put the entire, except for the green space next to the rivers and Indian Brook, everything is neighborhood. So there is no little egg-shaped spot that didn't qualify. So we're good to go on that.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Regina?
Just to clarify to Taylor and Chris's point that there's very little distinction between the two in terms of benefits at this point. So the motion in front of you is to go to the Tier 1B status for everything except those green areas. So it is little at this stage of the game, a whole lot of real distinction between those two for right now.
Okay. Marcus, you're up.
Yeah, I really did appreciate that clarity. So I'm willing to make this motion. I move that the city council adopt the municipal resolution as presented and request that the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission seek the Land Use Review Board's approval to have the downtown center and planned growth area qualify and be mapped for Act 250 Tier 1B area status.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion is approved. Thank you, Taylor. Thank you, Chris.
Awesome. Thanks, folks. I think there was a resolution in your packet too. I think the motion fulfills the resolution's job, but if you could have that signed, Regina, and send that over to me, it'd be much appreciated.
Will do.
We can do that. Thank you. And now I believe we are moving on to Department Head Brief to Council, Communications and Strategic Initiatives Director, Ashley, you're up.
Thanks, guys, for having me tonight. So tonight we're just going to go over briefly some of the things that I've been working on. It says 6 months, but I feel like it's more of a year that I've been working on, and since I've had an opportunity to talk with the council. So we'll dive right into the things that I've been working on. One of the things that we started this year was the community newsletter that started in September. We are doing a full page ad in the Essex Reporter that has at least 2 of our stories that we wanted to feature for the month. It also features things like our upcoming meetings for the month and our upcoming events and key things that we want the community to know about. That's published in the Essex Reporter, which is the first Friday of the month. So it's kind of at the beginning of the month also that we send out our electronic newsletter as well. We try to coincide those to come out on the same day. Our electronic newsletter features all the information for the month that we're trying to get out. and goes out to a list of subscribers that we have. We currently have 105 subscribers to that newsletter. And then I'm really proud that this is an extra tool in our communications toolbox and another way to get information out to our community. We've also been moving forward with our strategic planning in the development of our department work plans. We started that this year, and I assisted the departments with what those work plans looked like and helped them develop those work plans. And then we moved into obviously our council and department head retreat. So now we've done a full year of this strategic planning process with moving that forward. I think it was a good first year. We're obviously always going to learn new things, and that will continue to evolve and grow as we move forward with that. But I feel like we had a good start, and this will gear us up for starting again in the next year and feeding that into the budget in years to come. We also did some new things with our council for our budget engagement this year. We added a couple of new engagement activities and tried that out. We also had our second community meal this year, which changed up a little bit from the previous year. I'm excited to see how that will grow and change over the next few years. With a budget also comes the annual report and newsletter that also goes in with that time period. And then last but not least, I've started the rebranding process. We have a committee of 8 people and myself, so 9 total. They are majority of the community that is part of that committee. We have 1 staff member and 1 council member. The rest is community members. We have been working for the past 3 or 4 weeks on 31 RFPs. I was super shocked to have that many RFPs. I was expecting maybe 10 at most. We'd only gotten 5 for the strategic plan. So to have 31 was truly astonishing. So it's taken us a little bit longer to work through all of those RFPs, but thankfully we've all worked through them finally. We met last week to go through those RFPs, and we've narrowed it down to 4 candidates that we are going to be interviewing this month. And then we will hopefully have a recommendation for the council for that consultant. So moving into that, with my look forward in the next 6 months, obviously rebranding is going to be my big ticket item. Once we have that consultant finalized, then we'll move into getting some research for our community on what that brand will look like and their thoughts and feelings around the identity of Essex Junction. Then we'll go into developing actually some ideas, which we'll then put back to the community to do a short little vote on what they like the best. And ultimately it will come back to you as a council to decide what you want as our new logo. One thing that came out of the retreat was a council engagement plan. So I'm going to be working on that in the next few months to get that to you. We have some upcoming events that I'll be reaching out to you guys for to see if you're interested in participating in. But something that I can help you guys organize and plan better and get some more activities going for the council, I think is a great addition moving forward. And last but definitely not least, I'm going to be working on a process for developing new committees and incorporating our youth members into more of those boards and committees. I was excited to see that we had a youth member interviewing tonight and being a part of the committee process. I want to see more of that. I want to see how we can incorporate that more into our community, our committees. And we have a lot of new committees ideas that we've had through the strategic planning process and then just in general. And I think that having a clear process on how we say yes or no to those committees will be beneficial for us to years to come. So with that being said, I have finished my 3rd year here with the City of Essex Junction, and I'm really proud of the work that we've been doing as a city. We've done a lot, it feels like, in the short 3 years. We have a great team, and we're led by a great city manager, and I'm very excited to see where we'll be at in the next 3 to 5 years.
Thanks, Ashley. Counselors, any questions for Ashley?
Ashley, I'll ask you because I've been asked by a number of community members, just general, not dates specific, but general timelines, what the rebrand kind of timeline kind of looks like. When do you think that we'll be having some of these conversations upcoming?
So we will hopefully, like I said, have a firm chosen by the end of this month. That is the goal. Like I said, we'll see what happens after we interview them. And then once we have interviewed them, we'll get that contract going. And it will determine on which consultant that we choose. So it's ranged from as short as 4 months to as long as 8 months. And so we will see what that comes out, but it will definitely be something that we'll be kicking off as soon as we have that consultant. We'll be starting that research process and gathering feedback from the community.
I have another, but I'll Ashley, I do want to ask, again, you know, as you talked about the newsletter, you've done the TV program, you've done a lot of these little things, and I know it's hard for us to be everywhere doing everything and always ever present. I'm curious, and look, you know, my full time, it works in that TV space, so I know how fractured media is generally. So I'm kind of curious about your thoughts about how you're feeling as a communicator, trying to communicate our message, trying to communicate our activities, and the things that we want people to engage in. Can you talk about maybe either the challenge or talk about what you think are some of the opportunities that we as a city should be using or can be using in order to communicate better?
Well, there's always finding new ways to communicate with our community members. I feel like there probably is some opportunity for us to look at maybe some text messaging or other more instant communications for our communities. That costs money though. So there's always trade-offs for getting more technology in a lot of those things. But there's also ways that we can look at that if that's a way we want to go, adding that on to some of our other existing things. It's something I've been in contact with our website provider on and seeing if that's something we can add. We do email notifications for all of our meetings and all of our new stuff right now. So adding that text messaging might be an option later down the road through our website provider that we currently have. Or it might be something that we need to look at moving forward with another provider to provide that service for. We obviously have VT alerts, and that's great for emergency communications. But for the day-to-day things, like if we want to put out a survey or something like that, we don't have that capability to reach people via their phone. So I think that there's definitely some things there. You know, there's a ton. I always say the more ways that we can reach the community, the better. But I feel like we do a good job of using the tools that we have right now in our community. Unless I always tease and say I don't do smoke signals yet. So that's still, up in the air. But I feel like that we do a good job with the tools that we do have in our toolbox. Now, part of that is finding other ways that we can reach those community members, like I mentioned with the text messaging. Did I answer your question, Marcus? I feel like I'm rambling now.
Yeah, I'll go one step deeper just to ask about, since you brought up the website, thinking about, accessibility for our community members to make sure that they're able to, when they get to the website, that they can get to the information. What are your thoughts about where we are with that and where we, because again, I think that's an important part of our ability to communicate with the community and access the calendar and things of that nature. So where do you think we are with that right now?
Yeah, so obviously there's always room for improvement on any of our communication. I will never get to a point where I feel like we're 100%, we're good to go in communications. It's something that we'll be constantly improving as we move forward. Right now, we have a good website provider that we've used for since I think 2013. He's a local provider that we've been using that has a very good price for the website that we have. I feel like there's some things that we could change a little bit on our website to make things a little bit more easier to find information. But it's also finding, when I first came on, we went through a rebrand of the website. It was a new look and feel of the website. So for this part, I evaluated the website, made sure that we have things where they need to be, trying to it's an ebb and flow of those balance of having things on the homepage, and having too much on the homepage, because when we first came on board, there was too much on the homepage. We were trying to put everything on the homepage, and it was just overcrowding. And so there is a balance that you have to have with putting things, whether that's front and center, but also and not having that overcrowding. So yeah, I think that there's definitely down the road, we'll look at that and we'll evaluate the website and evaluate our providers as we move forward, and seeing if there's any new capabilities that we want to add for our community. And that might tie into that text messaging, or that instant, like where I worked in education before I came to Essex Junction. We had an app and we had text messaging and emails, and it all went at one time. I posted once and done. It was great. And that was a great service that we had for our community. But that's, ways down the road to look and see if that's something that would fit our community and what other municipalities are doing in that arena.
No, I don't.
I just had a question around the newsletter.
Yeah.
And 105 subscribers that automatically receive it. How are you getting the word out about that newsletter? Is it just something that they stumble on, or is there, I'm genuinely asking.
Whoops.
Because
A newsletter.
I seem like, I subscribe to the Town of Essex newsletter that generally drops into my inbox monthly, and it's a great feature. And I get I'll call it an employee newsletter spotlight from the city. But the Junction newsletter escapes me. And so I'm wondering how we get word out about that.
So it was something that when we initially came out, we did a really big push for it. It's something that we tag on each of our, so when we put it in the Essex Reporter, there's a QR code for you to subscribe to the newsletter if you want to see the full newsletter. So we mentioned that this is only a brief snapshot of the newsletter in the Essex Reporter. We are doing digital ads where people can subscribe to the newsletter as well on the Essex Reporter website. So that's part of our advertising package with them. And then it's just when we put out information, when we did the community news or the community meal, we had subscriber information there so people could sign up there. So anytime that I have an opportunity to be in front of the public, that's one of the things that I'm pushing myself. And it's something that definitely we can do more engagement on. So just go to our website and you can subscribe, Tim, and you'll get it in your email every month.
And then the other piece I wanted to ask you about is this Junction City News piece that's done the fourth week of the month that is with CCTV. And I'm wondering if you can give us some insight as to the resource requirement and output for return on investment. So does CCTV log views? Is there a way to determine that the energy that you're putting out for that gets you a return on the investment?
So it's just like any of our council meetings, they become a YouTube. It's on the YouTube channel, so we can look at the views from there. It's something that as part of my work plan, is to look at those numbers. So I haven't done that yet because we're not done with the end of the year yet. But yeah, so there are that opportunity to look at subscribers, or not, I shouldn't say subscribers, look at viewers from each of the different things. But I feel like too, it's partly topical as well. So if we usually have a topic every month that we talk about to go in a little deeper. For instance, in this newsletter, we're talking a little bit about the TOD draft master plan is coming out this week. That's something that people can give feedback on. So then Chris and I are going to talk about some really key ideas coming up at our next Junction City News. So it's trying to tie in all of our communication and hitting multiple points of important stories that we're trying to get out to our community. So they're hearing that maybe in a different, multiple ways and in different formats.
And the last piece, I'll just acknowledge the depth of talent that has come forward for the rebranding committee. They are new faces, they are new names, they are very well qualified individuals, and they bring forth a ton of knowledge. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah. It's very exciting.
I'll just recommend this based on my experience with YouTube, especially watching my wife use YouTube. If you can find a small 3-year-old British child who can present the TOD, I'm telling you, people will love it. They will tune in by the millions.
By the millions. You can tell it's after 8:30 and the meeting starts to go downhill at that point. So
Just stuck around, they find out how more entertaining we are now.
thank you, Ashley, especially for hanging in there to get to the 8:30 hour. We appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me tonight.
Have a
guys.
good night. All right, consent agenda.
Agenda.
Second. I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, council member comments and city manager report. Regina.
Been a little bit since we've given an update on this. So just so folks know, the traffic lights at 5 Corners, there still are some tweaking and some changing that will be done there now that we've kind of done some research and thought through what changes should happen. So more to come there. 2 Lincoln is moving along and don't have a super final end date at this point just yet, or clear schedule on when city offices will be moving back in there, but we're getting closer. It's very exciting, and really appreciate the patience while we had the 2 Lincoln driveway open and closed, open and closed, open and closed, open and closed there. So thanks for that. Yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you. Counselors?
I would like to ask the community, and I mean this for everyone, to be more mindful on the roads. It is summer. I understand that it's a great time to be out on your vehicle. It's also a great time for people who are out riding, whether you're a cyclist or a biker. And, you know, I've just been witnessing more and more people seeming to enjoying the sunshine as we should, but at the same time, not really paying attention to the small profile that is a cyclist or a biker. So I'd just like to ask the community to give a little extra attention, a little extra thought, because look, we want everybody to get to their destination safe, come home safely, and enjoy the community in which we live in, and not have it be a place of tragedy. So thank you.
Thanks, Marcus. I usually do that yearly post on Facebook of reminder that this is a walkable, bikeable city and slow down, watch for traffic. So appreciate that reminder. Tim, Brian?
Nothing from me.
Regina, I had a question just today about the 5 Corners timing. Everyone in town is an amateur traffic engineer, but we have professional ones. In the past, I've spoken to Ricky, and he's talked about, and this appeals to me as an engineer, collecting data, and then we can tweak the timing of these lights. Sounds to me like what you said is that we've done that, and we're about to start tweaking. Is that an accurate understanding of what you said?
Yeah, so the cameras were out for a while ago at this point. I'm going to say a couple of weeks. So that data has been analyzed, and we've thought through what some tweaks can be, and that information has been handed over to ECI, who will put that in motion. So I don't have a set date right now of when exactly that is going to happen, but we are working on it.
Is it useful to communicate that to the community, that we're making progress in that, and we've done some measurements, and we're working on it with, professional traffic engineers? I guess that's more of a suggestion than a question.
Yeah. Yes, I think we can put a note out about that again, because it's been a while since we've put out the notice that we were starting to collect data. So, yep.
Thank you. We do have an executive session.
Question before me.
Hit us.
I will move that the city council enter into executive session to discuss the appointment of public officials pursuant to 1 VSA 313A3 to include the city manager.
Second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we are going into executive session. I am not sure if we're returning. All right, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. All right, guys, have a good night. Thank you.